Your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man, Louie T, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using a brand new grading scale from 5 to 1, 5 being the highest grade a pick can receive, 1 being the lowest grade a pick can receive. We will then tally up all the grades from each and every single pick, divide by the number of selections made, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series, picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer out there, are in total control, as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Arizona next, Ari next, Cardinals next, Arizona. You know what I'm saying. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Arizona Cardinals. And this is a team that is very intriguing. One of those teams that I think is a chic pick to be one of those worst to first type of teams. You know, one of those teams that didn't make the playoffs last year. No one's really checking for them. But if 4 teams are going to exit the playoffs and 4 new teams are going to enter, and there's going to be 1 or 2 teams you weren't expecting, like Buffalo last year, for instance, with a second-year quarterback, like Buffalo last year, for instance, that can maybe play a little bit of defense, like Buffalo last year, for instance, that just kind of took the league by storm and quietly went about their business. You looked up, they had double-digit wins. They were in the postseason and almost stole one on the road in Wild Card Weekend. That could be Arizona this year. Okay, they've got the second-year quarterback. They've got a coach that's comfortable. They've got the players in there that they believe can help them turn this program around. They make the big offseason splash trade for DeAndre Hopkins. This thing is moving in the right direction. And I know a lot of talk after the draft was surrounding the home of Kliff Kingsbury, and rightfully so. That he was living in was effing sweet, okay? His pad, dope. But this team, however, should be talked about as a scary, scary team out west in what arguably is the toughest division in all of football. I mean, 49ers represented the NFC in the postseason, in the Super Bowl last year. The Seahawks were in the divisional round last season. And you look at the Rams, they were 1 game away from the postseason themselves. And here comes the Arizona Cardinals. So, look out. I'm just saying this is a dangerous team. And if they're able to put together everything in one season, the Arizona Cardinals could be a dangerous team in 2020. They've got the talent, that's for sure. I love what they did in the draft last year. I love what they did in the draft this year. This is a grocery list draft for the Arizona Cardinals. I love the grocery list: bread, egg, cheese, milk, cereal. You're in, you're out. No extra items necessary. 6 selections for the Cardinals in this year's draft. Let's see what Steve Keim and company did to help build around Kyler Murray and get this thing on track as we look at the Cardinals 2020 NFL draft class. Here they are. Let's jump into this draft, shall we? With the first selection of this Cardinals draft. 8th overall in the first round, linebacker / safety / whatever you want to call him, out of Clemson. Isaiah Simmons is the pick. Got my write-ups for every single player in this draft right in front of me, and I'll be reading from them as we start with Simmons, who is just a freak of nature. And to be honest with you, one of the bigger steals of the top 10 was the Arizona Cardinals getting their hands on Isaiah Simmons at number 8. The Panthers had a big decision to make at 7. Do we go with the all-world linebacker hybrid safety in Simmons, or do we go with the defensive tackle dynamo in Derek Brown? They chose the defensive tackle. You benefit as you get Isaiah Simmons at number 8. Just too good to pass up here if you're the Cardinals. 6'4", 238 pounds, ran a 4.39 40 at the combine. All of those numbers kind of speak for themselves. 16 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 7 pass breakups, 3 interceptions in 2019 for the runner-up Clemson Tigers. His career stats: 28 tackles and a half for loss, 10.5 of which were sacks, 5 forced fumbles, 19 pass breakups, 4 interceptions. So he's starting to come into his own, and that's scary because a guy with this much talent that still hasn't maximized all the talent in that body of his could be a scary proposition for NFL offenses for many years to come. I had obviously a first round grade on him. I had a top 5 pick grade on Isaiah Simmons. He was my first linebacker because I rated him as a linebacker, not a safety in this year's draft. He was my number 1 linebacker. The Cardinals are going to play him at linebacker. They have him listed at linebacker. He's going to be all over the field in their defense. Strengths, obviously size, speed, and versatility. I'm just going to knock those out really quickly. Size, 6'4", 238. Do I need to say anything else? His speed is ridiculous, and you see it on film. It jumps, it pops. You turn on any game you want, and number 11 is flying around the football field, sideline to sideline, whether he's at safety, whether he's at linebacker, whether he's blitzing, rushing off the edge as a rusher. He can do a little bit of everything, and he does it in a very expeditiously way wherever he is on the field. And so speed is definitely one of his biggest attributes. Versatility. I just mentioned all the ways he was used for Brent Venables in Clemson's defense. So I'd imagine they're going to get really creative with the ways they are able to use him on the field in Arizona. Can't wait to see how they use him and how they are able to get the most out of all of the talent that is in Isaiah Simmons' body. Playmaking ability. Just watch him in the national championship game. I thought he was spectacular in that game versus LSU. He was all over the football field. He was rushing after Joe Burrow. He was breaking up passes. He had an extraordinary pick where he gets to show the range off, coming from the middle of the field all the way to the sideline and making a pick. He was everywhere, man. The breakups underneath coverage, you name it, he did it in that game, and it just kind of showed you all that he has to offer and then some. So the versatility, the playmaking ability on full display with him. Acceleration, I talked about the speed, and he's a guy that can dial it up quickly. It doesn't take him much, but can also build it up as well. And he's a twitchy guy, so he goes from 0 to 60 just like that. So the acceleration is something that you get from him. And once he gets to open it up, man, is it fun to watch. Able to knife into gaps to make plays. Again, this is a guy that kind of specializes in just about everything around the line of scrimmage. And then you take him 30 yards away from the line of scrimmage, and he's just as effective. His ability to knife into gaps around the line of scrimmage makes him a Swiss Army knife, and you really don't know what he's going to do. It's hard to account for him around the line of scrimmage because you're not quite sure what he's going to do. Is he going to drop into coverage? Is he going to play man-to-man against my slot? Is he going to blitz off the edge? Is he going to blitz the A-gap? Is he going to knife into the backfield, make a tackle for loss? He does a lot of different things, and him being able to turn skinny and slither into the backfield is just one of his many gifts. Effective blitzer, I just talked about him coming off the edge, and they can move him around, and that's the beauty of Isaiah Simmons. Is it's hard for the offense to account for him because you can line him up anywhere. One play, he's on the left side of the defense. The next play, he's on the right side of the defense. The next play, he's 30 yards away. The next play, he's mugging your A-gap. And he can blitz from anywhere on the football field, from the slot, from the A-gap, from the outside, off of the C-gap or the D-gap. I mean, he's everywhere, and he's a very effective blitzer. And the biggest thing about him as a blitzer is his closing speed. If no one accounts for him, he's going to be on your quarterback before he even has a chance to set up shop. So he's a very effective blitzer. Efficient tackler, very long, a really wide tackling range because of his radius because of his length and his size. So he's a guy that just gets you down. It's not always pretty. It's not always physically done, but it's done. And that's all I really care about is get guys on the ground, and he generally does that. Can play in coverage and in space. He's not a fish out of water when you take him away from the line of scrimmage. With a lot of guys that are really good around the line of scrimmage, the further they move away from the line of scrimmage, the less and less effective they become He's not afraid to be out in space. You can drop him into coverage. He's very fluid. He flips his hips. He transitions well. With the transitions, he's a big guy. Sometimes they're a little leggy and they're a little slow. But outside of that, this is a guy that can do everything, and you trust him in coverage. He's a single high free safety every day of the week, twice on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. And some Saturdays. So this is a guy that you can play just about anywhere on the defense. And then I talked about the closing speed when you blitz him, and that's just anywhere. That's just in general. It's sideline to sideline. You run a toss opposite of him. He gets a running start. Nobody puts a hand on him. His closing speed will allow him to get over there and minimize the gain on the play. So closing speed is definitely something that comes with the Isaiah Simmons package. You get to his weaknesses. Lots of work to do as a linebacker, and like I said, I think that's going to be his primary position at the next level. But he reads and reacts very slowly right now, and look, this will happen over time with him. The more he gets exposed to playing the linebacker position, the more that he sees, the easier this stuff will come to him, and he'll react a lot quicker. Physically, taking on blocks, his physicality, it wanes for me. He's 240 pounds. I think he's more accustomed to playing away from the line of scrimmage than at the line of scrimmage. The more he plays at the line of scrimmage, I think the more physically built he will become and understand the rigors of being in the box and having to take on these pulling guards and these fullbacks and things of that nature. He'll get better, I believe, at that kind of thing. And then disengaging from blocks. I think sometimes he's stuck on blocks a little bit too long for my liking. I'd like to see him be able to stack his shed. He's got the length. He's got the ability to keep guys at bay and keep himself clean enough to be able to make plays and tackles on running backs and things of that nature. So I'd like to see him be a little bit more physical at the point of attack when being engaged by offensive linemen, tight ends, fullbacks, etc. Pursuit angles around the line of scrimmage isn't always the cleanest. Look, when you run a 4.39 40, you can get away with taking some sloppy angles. I'd like to see him clean that up because, again, you're not going to be playing against North Carolina. You're not going to be playing against NC State. All right, you're not playing against lesser teams with less guys that can run really, really fast. Now you're in the NFL. Everybody's fast. There are varying degrees, but everybody can run. So you take that poor angle against North Carolina. You take that poor angle against Pitt. Guess what? You're fine. That guy's running a 4.62 40. You're going to hawk him down, catch him, and push him out of bounds for a 1-yard gain. You take that same sloppy angle against the Los Angeles Rams now, and all of a sudden, that's a 17-yard gain around the corner because you took a poor angle and you weren't able to catch up to fill in the blank running back, okay, or fill in the blank wide receiver on a jet sweep. So he just has to be a little bit better about taking pursuit angles. Transition in man-to-man coverage is still a work in progress. I talked about that. His transitions aren't always the cleanest or the most fluid, but again, I'm nitpicking here, okay? There's not much to be disappointed about with Isaiah Simmons, man. This is a one-of-a-kind type of athlete. He's a unicorn. These guys don't grow on trees, and you don't see them come into the league very often. I don't like throwing around unicorn very often because you see guys with certain skill sets, and he has a guy. There's a guy in mind that has a similar skill set. There are a couple actually, but they don't have the size. That's the thing that makes him so unique, is that in this package that I'm referring to, you're getting size, you're getting length, you're getting speed, you're getting everything. Playmaking ability. And I got a couple of comps. Derwin James comes to mind, obviously, as a guy that's comp to him. But Derwin James is 6'2", 215. He's not 6'4", 240, okay? And that's the difference. And Derwin James wasn't running a sub 4.4. Now, Derwin James ran a 4.4 and some change. So it's not like he was slow or anything. Another guy that comes to mind is Darius Leonard in Indianapolis. But Darius Leonard, again, not 6'4", 240. Darius Leonard is probably about 6'2", 235-ish. So he's got the size, but he's a 4.52, 4.55 guy is Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard isn't a 4.39 guy. So it's hard to find that same kind of apples to apples comparison, but you've got guys that have a similar skill set to Isaiah Simmons in the league already. But this is a hell of a pickup if you're Arizona. I mean, to finish where you finished last year, kind of trending upward, feeling good about your season with a young team and a young quarterback and a young first-year head coach, to do some of the things you did last year and then to land this guy at number 8, you got to feel really good about yourself. Obviously, in the first round, 8th overall pick, Clemson defender Isaiah Simmons is an easy 5. It's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to discuss. You feel really good. You feel like you won something getting a guy like this at number 8 that should have been gone off the board no later than 5 in any regular draft. Instead, this is not a regular draft with a bunch of talented football players and some quarterbacks that got pushed up, and all of a sudden you get a guy like this to fall into your lap. Got to feel good if you're the Arizona Cardinals. As we move on to the second pick in this draft, 3rd round, 72nd pick overall. Remember the trade for DeAndre Hopkins nets the Texans your 2nd round pick. So we go to the 3rd round, 72nd pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Houston, Josh Jones is the pick. I was shocked that he was here for you in the 3rd round. I'm going to be brutally honest. This was my 5th tackle on the board, and you're getting him here, I believe, as the 8th tackle selected in this draft. I don't count Robert Hunt as a tackle. I think he's going to end up kicking inside the guard, but that's nor here nor there. Guys like Isaiah Wilson went in the 1st round over a guy like Josh Jones. Give me a break. I honestly didn't think that a guy like Austin Jackson, who was taken very early in the draft, as a matter of fact, the 5th tackle taken in this draft, went in the 1st round. I didn't think he was better than Joshua Jones, to be honest with you. So to me, and you know what I found out after the draft from an NFL insider was that the reason he fell in the draft, and there were certain players in this draft that were hurt by the lack of visits because of the COVID-19, because of the Rona, that they weren't able to meet with teams. They weren't able to kind of solve some of the issues some teams may have had. And I think he was one of those guys that was hurt by the fact that he wasn't able to get into some facilities and prove that he was more athletically gifted than he showed at the combine. So here's a guy that when you watch him on tape, you're blown away by his athleticism, his movement skills, and you're excited about all of the things that you're going to be able to work with. And then he comes to the combine and you don't see the same athleticism. And the reason why was because at Houston, he played at around 293, 297 pounds. He was south of 300 pounds. He gets to the combine, he bulks up, he gets bigger to show everyone that he can put on weight. He's 319, but he's now sluggish. He runs a 5.27. He's not the same athletic dynamo that you see on tape. And teams were kind of skeptical on, what are we getting? Who is this guy? This is not the guy we watched on tape. And I think teams were scared away by that. And so I think it's to your benefit because he's going to get, I believe, into better shape. And maybe 319 is too heavy for him. Maybe 307 is better for him. And it allows him to move around with the fluidity that you saw from him on tape. Whatever the case may be, they'll figure it out. They'll get him right. But you got a steal here is what you got. You got an absolute bargain. I had a 2nd round grade on Josh Jones. And to me, if he would have went in the 1st round, I would have been perfectly fine with that. To be brutally honest with you, I thought if there were 6 tackles going in the 1st round, he'd definitely be one of them. For him to not be selected in the 2nd either, I just thought that was crazy. And he had an injury too. Let's not forget that. He had an injury in 2019 that cost him 6 games. So that's something else to consider. Teams probably took that into consideration as well. But 6'5", 319, 34-inch arms, 5.27 40, as I mentioned. 9 games, 9 starts at left tackle in 2019, as I mentioned. 6 games missed due to injury in 3 seasons, 4 of them coming in 2019. So that's something else just to keep in mind, that he's dealt with some injuries over the life of his career, missed 4 games, not 6. If I said 6 earlier, I meant 4 in 19, 6 overall in the last 3 seasons. 45 games, though, overall, 45 starts at left tackle. So he does have experience, and he is a guy that usually finds a way to suit up and be on the field. Anyhow, strengths, size. I love his size, and I think he's got the kind of frame that can add weight on, which he did. And I think he needs to now subtract some weight, but then make sure that you still are at a weight that is going to help you succeed at this NFL level. Like, you can't get it done at 293. So obviously they need to find what the money weight for him is. What's a happy medium for him? 319 may be too heavy. He may be a guy that needs to walk around at 308, 307 somewhere. They got to find that happy medium for him. But I like his frame because, again, he's got that long angular frame that is allowed to add on more muscle mass. So, plus movement skills. That was the thing that sold me on him, was like, man, I love the way this guy moves. He's a guy that you can do so many creative things with. And with this offense, this air raid attack that you have in Arizona, where there are a lot of quick hitters where you get it out, on the perimeter, and you get your tackle out in space running to get up there and have a kick out block. Guys like Joshua Jones are vital to the success of offenses like that. And his plus movement skills, to me, are exactly what the Cardinals were looking for. You got DJ Humphries, a guy that's athletic, that can move a little bit. And I think at some point you're going to have to replace Marcus Gilbert, whether that's this year or next year. Joshua Jones could be that guy for you. So I really feel like his plus movement skills, and I think they're going to come back. They weren't shown at the combine. I think they're going to come back. And I think he's a guy that you're going to love in terms of the athleticism department. Physical mean streak. He pancakes guys, man. He's a nasty dude. Don't let the sleek 300-pound frame fool you. This is a guy that will do you, okay? Drop you on your skull. Put a nice Macho Man Randy Savage, ooh yeah, elbow drop on you and pancake you, man. Put a little extra syrup on top, too. Experience. I talked about the 45 games started in his career at left tackle. So he's a very seasoned tackle. He has good bend. For a guy that's 6'5", sometimes 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", you get these tackles, they're stiff. Their knees, they don't bend. They bend at the waist, not the knees. You don't want guys that bend at the waist, okay? That's where the term Mike Mayock came up with of a heavy-legged waist bender. You don't want to be that guy. He doesn't bend at the waist. He bends at his knees, and that's a good thing. Keeps you balanced, keeps you in a position to be powerful and strike, and helps you move very effectively as well. Reacts to speed very well. Again, that's where the athleticism comes from, or it really comes into play, I should say. Moves laterally very well, so it helps in the recovery process, things of that nature. Nice chop and drop technique. So what I mean by that is he's got the meanest chop and drop technique in the entire draft. What that is for an offensive lineman is when an edge rusher tries to get their hands on you as an offensive tackle. Just like the defensive linemen and edge rushers try to do to tackles who want to get their hands on that guy first, you slap the hands down. So he chops your hands down, and when you then dip down because your hands go down, guess what? Hand down, man down. So when your hands go down, the rest of your body goes down. He then flattens you to the ground and plops on top of you. It's a very vicious, flavor delicious, one step, one process, fluid move. Boom, down on you. It's almost like Bowser just dropping on top of you. It's really fun to watch. Goes looking for work. He's a guy that isn't cool with just sitting on the block chilling. If he has nobody to block, he'll just go flatten the guy that's the guard's blocking. If he's going to do something. He's going to be involved. Like I said, he's a nasty dude. He's a nasty boy. Nasty boy. He's a nasty boy. Those are the kind of guys you want in the trenches. Easy climber to the second level. Well, again, he's athletically gifted, so what do you expect, right? As we get to the weaknesses, inconsistent with his technique, with his knee bend. So I talked about him having good knee bend, but he didn't always do it. His technique, he's all over the place, in terms of it being from a technique and a technical standpoint. He needs a lot of work, but he gets the job done. It isn't always pretty. A lot of times his pass protecting looks like he's in a bar fight, but he usually comes out the victor, and look, there's something to be said about technique, because if you're not technically sound and you're going up against a guy that is, usually the guy that is most technically sound is going to win out. And so while you may be able to get away with that in the AAC, all right, against UConn and against Memphis and against Navy and SMU, you're not going to be able to get away with that against Aaron Donald, okay? You're not going to be able to get away with that against the upper echelon guys that can get after the quarterback. And so he's going to have to clean up some of his technical flaws. Doesn't possess the length that teams covet at the position. I don't nitpick on that. I leave that for other people. Only time I bring up your arm length is when I see it as a problem. I didn't see it as a problem on tape, but it's just something worth mentioning. Doesn't generate real movement in the run game. That's my biggest issue with Josh Jones, is that for him, he's more of a finesse guy in the run game. He'll get to the backside cutoff. He's a guy that will get to that reach block because he's athletically gifted. He'll do that. But what he's not going to do is take that guy in front of him, erase the line of scrimmage, and move it up 2 yards. That's not his thing. All right. But what he will do is he will create a barrier in between the running back and the defender. He'll get in the way. And if your running back is able to maneuver around his blockers, he'll find a way to set up Josh Jones and he'll be able to work off of his block. But if you're looking for a guy to just create space, that's not what this guy is all about. And then finally, his injury history. I talked about it briefly, but just to reiterate, missed 6 games over the last 3 seasons, 2 in 2017, 4 in 2019. So that's on the Carfax, something you may want to dig into. But at the end of the day, to me, this is an absolute steal in the 3rd round, 72nd pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Houston, Joshua Jones for me is a 5. He had no business being here. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is a steal. This guy should have been gone no later than the early stages of the 2nd round. I thought he could have went off the board in the 1st round. Again, if you would have told me 6 tackles were coming off the board in round 1 and Joshua Jones wasn't one of them, I would have told you were a damn lie, okay? The fact that he not only didn't come off the board in the 1st round, but then we went a whole nother round and he didn't come off the board is actually criminal to me. So that's a big time get for you here in the 2nd round. As we move on to the next pick in the draft for the Arizona Cardinals. 4th round, 114th overall selection, defensive lineman out of Utah. Leki Fotu is the pick. 6'5", 330 pounds, 34-inch arms. He's a behemoth. All right. 8 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass breakups in 2019. For his career, 17 tackles for loss, 4.5 of them were sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 3 pass breakups, 1 blocked kick in his career. I had a late day 2, so 3rd round, to early day 3, 4th round pick grade on him. So this is right in his wheelhouse. This is right in my wheelhouse for where you take a guy like Leki Fotu. And he was my 9th rated defensive lineman in this draft. So I thought you got good value here getting him. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on, but his strengths, massive frame. I told you he's a behemoth, 6'5", 330, and he looks the part. You see him on tape and he looks big, but he carries it well. You know, the last few years we've seen a lot of these Samoans coming out of the Pac-12, and they look big. You know, they look like they're 330. He looks like he's like 310. It carries it well, man. And I think some of it has to do too. He's not 6'1", 330 like some of these other guys we've seen, or, you know, a big rotund guy. He's angular with his, so it kind of stretches out. But again, a massive frame. He's got length, 34-inch arms. That is money inside. That's crazy. Brute strength. Most of these Samoans are just really strong. They're naturally strong. And these are the guys that at the combine are pumping up 37 reps of 2 1/4. He's no different. Another one of these guys, just massively strong, extremely sturdy at the point of attack. Generally speaking, I'm watching this guy take on doubles. They're not moving him. I'm watching this guy destroy guards and centers singled up, blowing them up 3-4 yards into the backfield. And he's a problem inside, man. And flashes of quickness into the backfield. He's quick off the snap at times. It's not as consistent as I would like it to be, but there's a swim, there's a rip, and he's in the backfield. You know, and when you get the football as a running back, and the first thing you see is a guy that's blocking the sun at 330 at 6'5", 330, all you're going to do is just pretty much ball up in a fetal position and hope you don't fumble the football at that point. And so there are countless times where this guy's in the backfield and, the running back at Washington or the running back at SC is like, what the hell are you guys doing? How's this guy back here before I even get a chance? There are those flashes of quickness into the backfield. Plays with a high motor, man. It's always on tilt. All right, this thing is always on, hot. His motor runs hot and it stays hot while he's in the ball game. Bull rush with a running start is like a high-speed locomotive. Hard to stop him from collapsing the pocket. And there are times where they line him up where he lines up. I don't know if the coaching staff told him to do this or not, where he'll actually line up an extra half yard away from the line of scrimmage. So most guys are lined up right on the ball, essentially. He's an extra half yard back. As the ball is snapped, he gets a running start, and then he just dump trucks that guard all the way to the quarterback. It's crazy to see a guy do that, but I'm wondering why more guys don't do that if all you need is a better running start. You don't want to be too far away from the line of scrimmage, but at the same time, if that's going to be the end result, sign me up. And then upside, he's still learning the game. This was a guy that was a former rugby player that only played 1 year of high school football. So what I'm essentially telling you is you're getting a guy here that's probably experienced in football all of 4, maybe 5 years max for his entire life. He didn't play Pop Warner football. He didn't play in middle school. He played 1 year in high school. This guy was playing rugby. It's a totally different sport. So he's still learning the nuances of the defensive tackle position and the game itself of football. So there's a lot of upside with Leki Fotu. You get to his weaknesses. Extremely stiff with little to no bend. He plays extremely upright and tall. And when you do that, you give up the leverage game. When you play tall, you allow guys to get up under your pads and have a better chance of driving you back. So I don't think you're going to be able to change that with him. There's not a lot of bend there with him. No explosion out of Leki Fotu whatsoever. He's not an explosive guy. But you see flashes of quickness, but he's not twitchy. That's not his thing. Like last year, we saw or 2 years ago, it might be now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took the defensive tackle from Washington. Forget what his name is, but he was twitchy, man. This guy was a big twitchy ball of fury at 330 pounds or whatever he was or is. That's not what Leki Fotu is. Not at all. Gotta become more consistent with this technique. Latch and snatch, swim move, hands, etc. He's got 34-inch arms. He should be grabbing offensive guards and centers, shaking them like a rag doll, and then throwing them out of the way and thrusting himself towards the quarterback or running back. Like, his latch and snatch should be his signature move because he's got the ability to contact that tackle, that guard, that center first. And he's not doing that. His hands, because he's got longer arms, he should be trying to win first with his hands. And he's just not. And again, he's raw. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So again, there's still room for growth. So I think these are all things technique-wise he can clean up and get better at. And then I don't know if he's scheme diverse or not. I think he's more of just a two-gapper. I don't think he's a one-gap penetrator. I don't think he's a guy you want getting up the field necessarily. I think he's a guy you want eating up space and allowing Isaiah Simmons and those types of guys to roam the field cleanly. You went out and got Devondre Campbell, who can also run. You want him clean. Leki Fotu is the guy you want in front of him because he's going to eat up space. He's going to eat up blockers, and that's going to allow Devondre Campbell. It's going to allow Isaiah Simmons. It's going to allow some of these other backers, these faster guys that you have on this roster, to be able to roam the field freely and get to their landmarks. So I love this pick. I really do. And you know why I love this pick? Because a wise man once told me, in order to win big in the NFL, you need to first concentrate on winning your division. You win your division and then you go from there. And when you look at the NFC West, I think it's abundantly clear that you got to be strong and stout up front, because if you're not, Seattle will ram it down your throat. And we know San Francisco will ram it down your throat. We watched them do it to just about every opponent last year, bludgeon them and beat them to death with the run game, including the Packers in the NFC Championship game. So you already know what you're up against in your division. And in order to kind of keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, yeah, you want to outscore people with your offense, and you're going to have a great chance to do that this year. But you know what? You don't want to lose the game 40-37, all right? You were in a couple of shootouts last year, and you didn't come out on the right side of them. You don't want to be in those situations this year. You want to be able to slow teams down, and in your division, it's paramount to be able to stop the run, and that's why you doubled up on the defensive tackle position. We're going to talk about another guy here in a second, but I thought that this was a great pick, and it's going to pay off huge dividends for you in the 4th round, 114th pick overall. Leki Fotu for me is a he is a 4. All right, and I love this selection, and I think he's going to pay off huge dividends for you. I comp him to Sione Pua, a guy that was another Samoan that was with the Jets for a long time in his career, played a lot of years in the NFL, probably like 9, 10, 11 years or so, and was dominant at times on the interior as a run-stopping defensive tackle. And I see a lot of the same traits and characteristics out of Leki Fotu. So I think he's going to do wonders for the Cardinals as we move on to the next 4th round pick, 137th overall. Or 131st overall, excuse me. Defensive tackle out of LSU, Rashard Lawrence is the pick, 6'2", 308 pounds, another long defender. So we see the trend here, what the Cardinals are looking for. They're looking for active, long defenders inside that are stout, 34-inch arms, much like Leki Fotu, the longer defender here in Rashard Lawrence. Not the same height, not the same girth, but the same length, a little bit more explosive and dynamic here. 6 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 3 pass breakups in 12 games for the national champion LSU Tigers in 2019. For his career, 21 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 7 pass breakups, 44 games. So you look at Rashard Lawrence. I had a mid-round grade on him, so 4th, 5th round, somewhere in there. So this is a good spot for him right here. Strengths, outstanding length, aids in his bull rush. He's got a really good bull rush. When he charges that up, he becomes pretty hard to stop. And that length is the catalyst for his tremendous bull rush. Plays with heavy, powerful hands. I talked about that bull rush. A lot of the reason why that bull rush is effective is not only his length, but his hands are heavy, man. He's got Roberto Duran hands of stone. I mean, when he hits a guy, you feel it in your chest. You know what I mean? It's that kind of physicality that you see him playing with. And he was one of those guys at the combine that I just felt like, man, dude, you're doing too much. You're too extra. And I thought he was being extra. You know, when he would hit the bag and he was just extra. No. That's how he plays, okay? When you watch him on tape, his arms are flailing all over the place. At the combine, I remember making a comment about him, and I think Neville Gallimore as well, that these guys were Rashard Lawrence's combine, when he ran his 40, his arms were like this. It was the worst form I'd ever seen. That's how he runs. That's how he plays. He plays balls to the wall, arms flailing all over the place. But it's effective, man, and his hands are definitely heavy. High energy, high motor guy, plays to the whistle. That's something you're going to love with Rashard Lawrence. Extremely tough, played through various injuries throughout 2019. And really throughout his career. He's a tough guy, man. Impacts the game on and off the stat sheet. You know, eating up blocks is the way you impact the game off the stat sheet. We a lot of times don't know the true impact of a defensive lineman unless you're actually watching that guy or watching the defensive line in particular. You look at the box score, no sacks, no tackles for loss, no pass breakups, nothing in particular. And you're like, well, what did this guy do? What does this guy do? It's not always about numbers with defensive linemen, especially on the interior. He's one of those guys that will eat up blockers and do the dirty work, allow the Patrick Queens and the Michael Divinity Juniors of the world for that LSU team to roam the field freely without a care, because guys like Rashard Lawrence are eating up blockers. So, again, he impacts the game. And I talked about the PBUs, 3 of them. Like, I love when guys, and to me, to whom much is given, much is expected. You know what I mean? With long arms, with 34-inch arms, there is an expectation from me. I can't speak for anybody else. There's an expectation from me that you need to knock passes down. To me, it is a absolute must that if you've got 33-inch arms or longer, I need you to impact the game, not just as a rusher or a run stopper, but also by getting your hands in the passing lanes and deflecting some passes. Those are just as good as a knockdown, or those are just as good. That's an incomplete pass. It's just as good as a defensive back getting his hand in there and knocking it down. I mean, that is an excellent play by a defensive tackle. So, to whom much is given, much is expected. And, with great power comes great responsibility. With me, with great length comes great responsibility. You got 34-inch arms, I need you to impact the game in multitude of ways, and he does. Quickness off the snap with a nice and clean swim move. He's one of those guys that can win right off the snap with quickness, with that swim. I talked about Leki Fotu getting in the backfield with the swim move. Same thing here with Rashard Lawrence, but his is a lot quicker. When he gets in the backfield, he's a problem. Leadership, high character guy. He was one of those guys that was a rock for the LSU Tigers. They really leaned on his leadership with this football team, and he showed it on and off the field, playing through injuries on the field, leading it off the field. Weaknesses. Doesn't always play with the leverage necessary to be impactful. At 6'2", with 34-inch arms, I expect him to win the leverage battle 9 times out of 10. And that's not always the case for him for whatever reason. I would like to see him win the leverage battle and stay lower than that offensive lineman and be able to create a little bit of movement with the leverage that he is supposed to be able to win because of his low center of gravity and longer arms. Frenetic playing style, body control, arms flailing. I talked about that already, but just to reiterate, he's all over the place sometimes. And sometimes because of the arms flailing and, him doing all of these gyrations, his body control is all over the place and he's not on balance, and it's just a mess sometimes. He's got to be able to harness some of that stuff and kind of control it. It's chaos. Control your chaos and make it work for you. Make it beneficial and not something that harms you at times. Can get to the quarterback, but really not his calling card. Like, he had 9 sacks in his career, 2.5 sacks this past year. That's not what he really is as a football player. That's not where he's most likely going to make his money at the next level. His calling card is going to be stopping the run, being a force, eating up blockers. Like I said, impacting the game in a multitude of ways. And injury concerns. I talked about him missing some games. It dealt with a myriad of injuries at LSU that cost him 9 games over a 4-year period, including an ankle that cost him 3 games in 2019. So, again, you're talking about a guy with some injuries. So that's on the Carfax. He was a team captain after his freshman year. So I talked about the leadership and the high character that you're getting here. That kind of speaks to that in Rashard Lawrence. 4th round, 131st pick overall. Rashard Lawrence, defensive tackle out of Clemson for me LSU is a 3. I liken him to Carlos Watkins, the defensive tackle out of Clemson, drafted by the Houston Texans, has played really good ball for the Texans, has developed into one of the better run-stopping defensive tackles in the league. So that's what I see potentially for Rashard Lawrence moving forward. As we move on to the next selection in this draft by the Arizona Cardinals, 6th round, 202nd pick overall, linebacker out of Cal, Evan Weaver is the selection. 6'2", 237 pounds, ran a 4.76 at the combine, 11 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 3 pass breakups in 2019. His career stats, 23.5 tackles for loss, of which 8.5 were sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 11 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 1 of which went to the crib. All right, so quite a decorated career. I'll just read you a couple of things before we even get into his breakdown. Led the nation with 182 tackles, 103 of which were solo. Let me repeat this because that's asinine. Led the nation with 182 tackles. Okay, dudes get a bunch of tackles. I've seen guys with 200 tackles in a collegiate season before. That's not the thing that's eye-opening. The 103 solo tackles, it's what is eye-popping. I've never seen that many solo tackles before. You know, generally, if you got a bunch of tackles, most of them, you're just piling up a bunch of half tackles, and they add up too. 103 solo tackles is ridiculous. And so much so that the next closest guy in college football in the entire nation, the next closest guy had 20 less tackles solo by himself. 83 was the number. All right, the next closest guy only had 83 solo tackles. So that tells you how busy Evan Weaver was. And because of his work in 2019, first team All-American, AP All-American, and first team All-Pac-12. So a lot of accolades here. I had a 5th or a 6th round grade. So this, again, right in the wheelhouse of where I thought he should be selected. Strengths. Good NFL linebacker size in terms of his 6'2", 237-pound frame. You're essentially talking 6'2", 240. That's right around where you're looking for your backer to be. He's a tackling machine. This is by far and away his best attribute. It's like he has stickum on his glove. I've never seen anything like this before. And I'm not being facetious, and I'm not being over dramatic with me saying I've never seen this before. I've never seen a guy. It's like if you got a piece of yarn, a piece of string hanging off your jersey, just a little bit of thread. If he gets a piece of your thread, he's gonna tackle you. It's insane. I'm watching him. He's going this way. The running back's going that way, and somehow he still grabs his ankle and pulls him down. I'm like, dude, there's no way you should have made that tackle. He's getting the tiniest of fibers on a guy's jersey, and then all of a sudden, it's like he's got a magnet on his hand that goes straight to their ankle, and he's pulling them down. Like, how are you making these tackles, dude? Like, every pile that they end up unpiling the players, 89 gets up from the pile. I'm like, I got to go back. How did you get in that pile and make that tackle? And I'm mind boggled at how many times you're thinking there's no way he's making that tackle. He's moving too fast in the wrong direction. Or that guy made a hell of a cut. That guy stopped on a dime, and he still finds a way to wrap that guy up and get him down. It's uncanny. Patient, yet plays with aggression, discipline, and instincts. He can be too patient. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but his patience is, I think, one of the keys to keeping him clean and out of harm's way. He stays clear of trash very well. And we'll talk about that here shortly, but he's patient, yet he's aggressive. You know, he sees it, he diagnoses it, and then he's coming downhill. And he's very disciplined. I didn't see him fall for many play action fakes. Like, that doesn't faze him. He's not one of these guys looking to bite off a first movement. Kind of stays at home, sees what you're doing, and then he reacts to it. And his instincts are off the charts. And they have to be. He's not a great athlete. We'll talk about that later. But he didn't have a choice but to be instinctual And he is. He knows how to find the football, man. He's one of those dudes that just finds out where the party's at, man. Like, he doesn't even know the people that are hosting the party, but he comes and crashes it anyway. Like, he just finds the party, man. And he's hopping from party to party to party. You know Evan's going to be there, you know. You didn't invite him, but Evan's showing up anyway. He just knows how to find the football, man. He's got a nose for it, a knack for it. Stack and shed. He's a stack and shed king. Like, he loads them up, heavy hands, discards that guard, gets to the ball carrier. Somehow, some way, by hook or by crook, he's getting involved. Keeps himself alive to be involved in the play. I talked about this earlier briefly, but he's a guy that plays with such patience that he doesn't get caught up in the wash. He doesn't get caught up in the wrong gap. He's just always where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. There are times where he's too patient. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he does a great job of staying out of the mess, out of the wash, keeping himself clean and getting to the ball carrier. High motor and high football IQ. Times up his blitzes very well. The thing about Evan Weaver that I love is that despite his limitations, he finds a way to counterbalance that, to counteract that by doing everything as well as you can possibly do them. And again, he has to overcompensate for the lack of athleticism. So, you know, think of Isaiah Simmons blitzing. He could blitz late, but because of his speed and his closing ability, he'll be on that quarterback in no time. Evan Weaver doesn't have that same capability. He doesn't have that same fortune afforded to him of waiting to the last second. He's got to time it up, Troy Polamalu style, and get in there, and he does. And so he's just a high football IQ guy. He knows angles. He knows what the offense is trying to do, how they're trying to set him up. He's got to watch countless hours of film. He's got to, because he seems to just always be in the right place at the right time. And solid as an underneath zone backer. That just, it boggles my mind, because I watch so many guys with athleticism that just can't find the football. Don't know where to be. And just, he's one of those guys, you're throwing a dig route behind him. He knows that you want to drop this running back in front of him as eye candy to suck him up, run a high-low concept in front of him. He's not stupid. He sees that the backer there, a running back's there. He knows it's 3rd and 9. If that backer catches the football, he's going to close on him and he's going to tackle him 2 yards short of the first down. So what does he do? He splits the difference, which is what the offense doesn't want that backer to do. He wants that backer to suck up, react to color, and sneak that dig route behind him and pick up 13 in the first down. He's not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. He's going to split the difference. He's going to be right there. And if you decide to throw that dig route, he's going to tear that receiver a new asshole. And I watched him do it. So he's just a smart guy, man. And even with his zone drops, I'm like, man, that's pretty damn impressive for a guy that's slow of foot. You get to his weaknesses. He's got a weird build. I mean, it's the kind that turns NFL GMs, scouts, coaches, and the like off. They see a guy with a frame that's loose and spongy and no muscle definition, and they're like, ugh. And he's that guy. He doesn't look the part of an NFL linebacker. Lacks muscle definition. He's got a wide body with short arms, and he looks like a long snapper, man. When you see him, he's wearing the 89 jersey, which doesn't do him any favors. He looks like a long snapper. He looks like he's about to spend the next 16 years snapping a football to a punter. But he's not. He is a linebacker that is pretty damn good. Lacks speed and explosion. That's the thing that if he doesn't make it in this league is going to be his undoing, is that, look, you can get away with it in the Pac-12 against Washington and against, Oregon State. All right. I don't know if he's going to be able to get away with it. There's something about guys that just know how to play the game, and he knows how to play the game. I would bet on Evan Weaver before I bet against him, but we've seen guys like him come along that were ultra productive in college, but were slew of foot and get to the NFL, and they just can't keep up. We'll see if he's that. Despite production in college as a pass defender, I think he's more of a two-down backer at the next level. I don't know if he's the guy you want on the field on third down, knowing that the other team has to throw the football. You have guys on your team, plenty of them, athletically gifted that are much better in pass coverage than an Evan Weaver. So I don't think you're going to be asking him to do that anyway. But and then he can be too patient. I talked about this already. This is a guy that sometimes waits, and a lot of time it's to his benefit, but sometimes it allows that pulling guard or it allows that fullback to get all the way to the second level to get to him, to create a little bit of a gap that maybe if he's a little bit more aggressive, instead of him allowing that guy to come all the way through to the second level to get to him, he comes and meets that guy in the gap, and now it's no hole there. And maybe that running back's now got to bounce it to his help. Instead, he allows that running back straight to him, and now it's a 5-yard gain. So he can be a little bit more aggressive. I think he could be less patient, more aggressive in certain instances. But in the 6th round, 202nd pick overall, linebacker out of Cal, Evan Weaver for me is a 3, man. I really like this guy. My comp for him is Tyler Medicavage. You remember him coming out of Temple, short, stubby, not a lot of muscle definition, wasn't fast. I think he ran like a 4.82 or something like that at the combine that year. But you love the tape. You loved his toughness. He was always around the football. He's still in the league, man. He's hanging in there. It's Tyler Medicavage, even though he was drafted back in like 2017 or something like that. He's still hanging in there. 2016, one of those drafts. I think I see the same kind of fate for Evan Weaver. And I actually think he's better than Tyler Medicavage ever was. So we'll see about Evan Weaver. I'm going to keep tabs on him because I actually like him as a football player. Finally, 7th round, 222nd pick overall, running back out of Arizona State, Eno Benjamin is the selection. 5'9", 207 pounds, ran a 4.57 40 out of Arizona State. 253 carries for 1,083 yards and 10 touchdowns on the ground in 2019 to go with 42 catches for 347 yards and 2 scores in his career, 576 career totes for 2,867 yards and 27 touchdowns. 82 catches, 625 receiving yards for 4 touchdowns in 35 games. So he is the quintessential Kliff Kingsbury running back out of the backfield, a guy that can run it, but more importantly, can catch it out of the backfield. It's why a guy like Kenyon Drake fits so well, like hand in glove in the scheme last season. You're looking for more guys like that. Eno Benjamin fits that profile to a T. I had a mid to late day 3 grade on him. Really rounds 4 through 6, anywhere in there, I was fine with him. You get him in round 7, so I think that's actually a bit of a steal. And I'll give you my player comp for him a little bit later on. I was actually surprised that he didn't go sooner in this draft. I saw a lot of guys that were, because initially I said, okay, so he's got a little bit of a fumbling problem. That's concerning. But you can fix that. I said, okay, he's not as fast, but there are a bunch of guys that weren't as fast. But I said, the things that Eno Benjamin does, not everyone in this draft can do. And I still saw a bunch of guys go in front of him that I'm like, you took him over Eno Benjamin? But it's all about fit. And he fits in Arizona. Maybe he didn't fit in Buffalo. Maybe he didn't fit in some of these other teams that took players that, I thought, that's a little sketchy of a pick. I'm not saying he's better than Zach Moss, because I didn't think he was better than Zach Moss. But just saying, there were a couple of guys that went where I'm like, he's better than Eno Benjamin, really? But it's about fit, and this is a great fit for you. So, strengths, quickness. This is a guy with, to me is, he's quicker than fast. So his quickness is the thing that's going to help him sustain an NFL career. Because of his quickness, he's able to make guys miss in space. Vision. He's got really solid vision. This is a guy that for all intents and purposes, was the guy at Arizona State. We remember Kalen Ballage had all the physical traits, 6'2", 230 pounds, ran a sub-4 540, and yet he wasn't starting. Why? Because Eno Benjamin was starting. And Eno Benjamin has been really good for Arizona State. And his vision, his toughness, Herm Edwards swears by Eno Benjamin. Like 4th and 1, 3rd and inches. Eno Benjamin's his guy, and he believes in Eno Benjamin. And I believe in Eno Benjamin as well. Durability. Again, another one of these guys that every week you count on him. You know he's going to be there. He's going to show up. He's going to get the job done. He's got a vicious jump cut. It's his favorite thing to do. Jump cut. Sometimes I'm like, you jump cutting for no reason, bro. Like, stop jump cutting. But his jump cut is very, very good. It's another reason he's able to make guys miss. It's another reason that the vision is on point, because he's able to get to things that some guys without a very dynamic jump cut aren't able to get to. So that's another big pro for him. Pass catching threat. I talked about all the receptions, so he kind of fits into that Kliff Kingsbury offense of being able to catch it out of the backfield. Make you miss. Watching him against Arizona, he was just making guys miss all over the place. So he can make you miss out in space. He's got that MYM ability. Solid pass pro. I think he's a guy that, at 207 pounds, can stand up for himself in pass pro. I wasn't disappointed. He wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. I've seen worse. And so I think he can survive. And in order to be on the field on third downs, you've got to be able to survive in pass pro, and I think he can. Yards after contact, contorts and spins after contact. That's another thing he does a ton of, is spinning. You hit him, and the first thing, without even thinking, his first inclination is to just spin. I think it's almost second nature to him. You hit Eno Benjamin, he's going to spin. All right. Now, whether he corkscrews himself into the ground or if he keeps his feet is another thing. But you hit Eno Benjamin, he's going to spin. Okay. Just know that. All right. And then now you get to his weaknesses. Does it possess elite contact balance? So contact balance is one of the holy grail, holy trinity things for me when I look at running backs. If you want to separate yourself from a group of backs, one of the things I go to is contact balance. It's the reason I was so high on Alvin Kamara coming out of Tennessee. When everybody else was talking about Alvin Kamara as a second or a third round pick, I looked at Alvin Kamara as a first round pick. Why? Because his contact balance was through the roof. And when you talk to anybody in the league, the first thing they mention about Alvin Kamara is not his speed. It's his contact balance, the ability to take a hit and keep his feet. Keep his balance. And that separates backs in this league. It's one of the things that I really focus in on, and he doesn't have great contact balance. You hit Eno Benjamin, and if he's not spinning, he's on the ground grinning. Doesn't have home run speed. The 4.57 might have scared some teams off. It is what it is. He doesn't have elite speed. He's quicker than fast. I've already mentioned that. It is what it is. Average acceleration, again, that kind of goes hand in hand with his speed. He's not a guy that's going to run away from you. He doesn't get to top speed very quickly, and his top speed isn't all that fast to begin with. So he's got average acceleration. You're not going to see him pull away from anyone anytime soon. Size to be an every down back. Not sure about that. At 5'9", 207, can he be a guy that is your bell cow? In today's NFL and on this particular team, he's not going to be asked to be that guy. But it's good to know if you need a guy in a pinch to touch it 27 times, is he capable of doing that on a consistent in and out basis? I'm not sure on a week in, week out basis. He's built to do that. And then finally, fumbles. This is another thing I focus in on with running backs. Got to hold on to the rock, man. The easiest way to end up in a coach's doghouse is to keep continuously putting the football on the carpet. He had 6 fumbles in 2019. That's a lot of damn fumbles for one season. That's a career for most guys. And even for a career, 6 is a lot. That's a lofty number. That's a hell of a lot of fumbles. He had 7 in his career in 2 years, all right? So 7 career fumbles in 2 years, 6 of which came in 2019, and he lost 4 of those 6 fumbles. That's a problem for me, man. And that might have been something else teams were a little weary of with Eno Benjamin. I can't speak for why he fell so far in the draft, but those are pretty damning things. You know, you don't have top speed. You're fumbling the football. You don't have great contact balance. I can understand why he fell to the 7th round. I thought he was more of a 4th, 5th round guy. 6th round, I thought you'd be fortunate if he was still there. You get him in the 7th round. That's a good get for you here in the 7th round. 222nd pick overall. Arizona State running back Eno Benjamin for me is a triple to wrap up this Cardinals draft. Really good draft by the Arizona Cardinals. And I think that a lot of the moves made were made with the division in mind. I mean, obviously the Eno Benjamin pick makes sense. You got Kenyon Drake just for one more year on a transition tag. So for all intents and purposes, he could be gone after this season. But you look at some of these picks, you got to get stronger along your defensive line because of the division you play in. So what do? You double down on the defensive tackle position, taking Leki, Fotu, and Rashard Lawrence. You look at this team and you say, all right, we need to be faster at linebacker. We need to be stouter at linebacker. We need guys that can produce at a high level. So what do? Evan Weaver back into the draft, and Isaiah Simmons, which was just too hard to pass up. It was too good of a guy to pass up at the beginning of your draft. So I thought this was a really good draft by the Cardinals. Couple that with the offseason that was extremely active, getting guys to come in and help you. I think this was a hell of an offseason. DeAndre Hopkins, adding Devondre Campbell and guys like that on the defensive side of the football. I thought you could have added an edge rusher. I thought that was the one thing you missed on in this particular draft, but maybe there wasn't a guy at the time of your pick to your liking, whatever the case may be. I like this draft. It totals out 23 overall points for the Cardinals divided by the 6 selections, nets you a 3.83 draft, which is good for a B+ in the 2020 NFL draft. A wrap-up series, and the grading scale is down below in the description if you want to take a look at that. But the Arizona Cardinals come away with a very impressive B+ for their draft. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thank you for joining me here on the Draft Wrap-Up Series. Many more videos to come, so make sure you stay tuned to the Louie T Network. And also, remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Follow me on Instagram, Louie T Network _. Also follow me on Twitter at Louie T Network. Those will keep you plugged in, along with following me on YouTube and turning on those notifications. As I mentioned, stay safe out there. Take care. We will reconvene and continue to follow the series here on the Louie T Network. Until next time, you guys take care. Have a good one. Louie T.